UrbanSPOOK. UrbanSPOOK. So, I usually try to keep analog horror videos either positive or constructive. Usually when people make analog horrors, they're small-scale passion projects. The creators didn't owe it to you to make it, so getting angry about the flaws that they have feels a bit like punching down. And that's been particularly easy because I've enjoyed every analog horror I've made a video on. My least favourite has been Smile Tapes, which I still thought had plenty of good elements. The Painter, however, changes things. This shouldn't surprise you, but I didn't think this was very good. It's not fully bad, there are some good aspects, but this mostly was just a poorly written, repetitive, needlessly gory web series that I can't see myself ever recommending to people. And so, after watching it, I decided that I wanted to make a video on it. Partially because I know that people seem to be interested in the discourse surrounding this series, but also because I haven't found a video that actually looks at each of the episodes individually. And so we arrive here. Here is every episode of The Painter ranked worst to best. Or rather, for a series like this that frankly mainly has bad episodes, we're going to do it from best to worst. I've got to draw out that suspense somehow. Alongside this, viewer discretion is advised. This series is seriously gross at points. But with that out of the way, buckle your seatbelts, pull out the vomit bag, and let's get into it.
He did it.
I did it.
He did it.
Hell is actually pretty good. It's not amazing, I'd give it a 7 out of 10, and it's a little sad that this is the peak of the series, but in a vacuum this definitely has some great elements. I'll get my main issue out of the way first. It drags on. This video is 11 minutes long, and it really shouldn't have been much more than 6 in my opinion. From 30 seconds in to 7 minutes in, it is nothing but gore and dead bodies. 1 minute of this would have been dark and decently spooky, but after that it starts losing all of its potential impact. UrbanSPOOK is not a series that focuses very much on its writing, it's always been more about the artworks, but this section is really reliant on the writing to be varied and creative, so the fact that it isn't makes the whole ordeal kind of a slog to get through. Keep that whole things going on for too long criticism in mind, because it will return in this video. So, what ended up pushing this one above all the rest? There are two main things. First off, the visuals. They look really good here. The Painter as a series doesn't use a whole lot of video. Most of its visual elements are text and the paintings that Mona makes. But this episode consists of a whole lot of found footage, which is not at all what I was expecting. The Painter is known as the low-effort, low-quality analog horror, but UrbanSPOOK full-on learnt 3D animation for this video. That's honestly really inspiring and cool to see. It's even better when you consider the fact that it does look really good. I'm sure part of it's the overlays used, but it looks super realistic. That adds a whole lot to the disturbing nature and got me pretty invested in whatever messed up thing was going to come next in spite of the repetition. Like, I'm in this world, it's cool. The other aspect that makes this episode pretty good overall is the ending, which is without a shadow of a doubt my favourite scene in the series. In the ending, Officer Nathan Cole runs into a home that he's been told the killers may be at. When he gets in, he catches them halfway through torturing Tina. This scene really comes out of nowhere and delivers on practically everything. The visuals are better than they've ever been, with a fantastic shaky cam aspect and more vibrance than anything else in the series. It actually got me invested in the plot, like it fully subverted my expectations, not only when they were caught, but when one of them was killed. The sound design, god that sound design! The entire rest of the series had been using such loud and overbearing background noise, and to emphasize the most important scene, all of that is stripped away. You can only hear screaming and it is spine-chilling. I also think that what happens to Tina in this scene is the most effective horror in this series. It's because it doesn't go too far. It very simply tells you that her eyes and ears were punctured, but makes everything feel so real and visceral by telling you that she didn't realize she was being rescued for 20 minutes. Jesus, that was a good scene. Overall, this episode is pretty neat. I don't think that it's great overall, but it's got some awesome aspects to it. From here on out though, the episodes are not as good. Significantly so. Let's keep going.
No witnesses?
Okay, so now that we've gotten past hell, practically all of these are going to mesh together. Most videos in this series fit the format of, these are some innocent people, police were sent over, this is the terrible stuff that happened, here are the paintings. It's not necessarily a bad format, but it just gets really old really fast. I'm already not the biggest fan of each of the following episodes in a vacuum, but they get worse when you consider the fact that they all have nearly identical clones right beside them. With all that said, Witness is definitely my favourite of these. Funny thing is, I can't properly tell you why. I just find the Flora, Tina and Jack storyline to be a lot more investing than any of the other ones. I think it's probably because there's an inherently interesting dynamic between a girl, her boyfriend, and her sister than there are in just a family or two friends. While the dynamic is never explored, there's an idea there that made the ensuing plot just that bit more impactful. I also think that given the structure, the story is well told. It doesn't use frustratingly emotive language or skip straight to the suffering, it takes its time, lets you know what happened, and keeps a mystery element by having all of these differing perspectives. I kinda like it. Also, the flower face flora painting is without a doubt one of my favorites just because of the title. Like, blank after the fire or long neck blank are predictable, you know you'll see someone burnt or hung. Meanwhile, flower face flora is creative, it's messed up, it forces me to imagine what this murderer could do to make someone's face resemble a flower. There's some stuff here that's cool, and I remember it a whole lot more vividly than most of these kinds of videos. However, at the end of the day, this is one of those videos, which means it's still not all that good. The horror is basically all his arms were cut off, his legs were cut off, he was forced to eat metal spoons and they called him Spoon George. The story and characters get no development, and the visuals are uninteresting. The editing emanates a creepy feeling decently well, but all of the visuals are just text and images, and it doesn't progress what the previous episodes had done. The paintings are neat though.
All around me are familiar faces, worn out.
Faces is the first episode of The Painter, and it's fine. It's what everyone made fun of for a good while a few years back, but compared to everything else, it's solid. It's not too outwardly disgusting, just a regular level of that's messed up. I actually think this episode does a good job at establishing the deranged nature of the painter and how she operates on a completely different logical framework, specifically with the title James' Secret Face. I think that's kinda cool. The paintings are all pretty good as usual, like Daniel After the Fire, Wax Doll Tom, and Toy Corey, the last of which surely won't show up again later in this video. I don't mind the ambience, it's pretty cool how it feels like it's constantly building up. The horror is obviously not that effective, mainly because there's no breathing room. In my opinion, the scariest films and analog horrors I've seen are so effective because you spend so much time in this world without there being horror. It creates more contrast and unpreparedness when it unveils its ugly head. But this one just opens up scary and ends scary, which can work sometimes, but this one just doesn't really diversify it. I don't know, I don't think I have to convince you that The Painter doesn't have great horror. Like all of the others, this one doesn't really have a plot, it just has character names. It's hard to get invested when you don't get the time to learn anything about these people before they're brutally slaughtered. I do like the sound design though, it's foreboding and dread-inducing, constantly playing throughout the whole video. It creates this relentless vibe that makes the video flow a whole lot better. And that's kind of it. Fine episode, nothing much to say, let's just keep going.
Fortnite.
The Lighthouse is pretty damn forgettable, but in this series, sometimes being forgettable is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of gross stuff, but it's less overbearing. There's at least a bit of focus on the location, mystery, and characters. It's pretty clear though that it's mostly window dressing to get put around the murders. I'll also bring up another complaint about this series that I have, which is that it uses too much emotive language. So often there will be phrases such as, her hands were ripped right off, the following images may be very distressing, or in this episode, she was only 2 years old. On a base level, this is obviously not a great decision. It breaks the immersion of these being documented in unbiased tapes, it feels try-hard, and the actual descriptions aren't detailed enough to warrant emotive language. But it's such an odd decision for The Painter especially, because, I mean, the content of this should be disturbing enough on its own, right? Even without extra emotion, the videos always seem to try too hard. It's just such an odd choice to not trust the content of your graphic, sex torture, serial killer analog horror to be upsetting enough. Anyways, The Lighthouse isn't the worst example of this, but it is the first moment in the series where this kind of language shows up, so it seemed fitting to bring it up now. Anywho, there's also something else I'd like to mention. This isn't necessarily a criticism, more of a personal preference thing. I don't love the optics of using children in horror. Sometimes it works, but usually if a child is getting torturously killed, then I'm tapped out. Sure enough, a 2-month-old is killed in this one, not in a gruesome way or anything, but it's still just not that fun to watch in my opinion. I will admit that it makes the killers all the more heinous, and the example in this episode should be less bad for others. Anyways, there's really not much else to say about this episode. I like how it uses the central location of the lighthouse, that gave it a little more personality. The kills aren't too disturbing yet, so that's kind of a plus. Okay, I've said everything that I can, onward we go. Pigs is the horse sex episode, and it is in the upper half of the list. Honestly though, I feel like this one is kind of overblown in terms of how bad it is. It has the 3rd worst like to dislike ratio, and while I see why, I don't fully agree. I think there's the kernel of something pretty good here. It just needed to be tackled with more subtlety and timing. The point of the first 9 episodes of this 10-episode series is to make you fear these truly deranged killers. Some of the actions that are made in this video move past sadism and characterize these people as well and truly inhuman, almost some kind of subspecies. Like, think about how these guys did that eye thing with the pig. It's so messed up, I don't even want to say it on this channel. This definitely has more creativity and substance than almost any other episode. Unfortunately, the execution doesn't match this nearly as well. This episode needed to take a gosh darn break. It is relentless in a bad way. The sound design in a vacuum would be good for the end of a 15-minute or longer video, but in this one it is so overbearing to the point of feeling like satire. The victims don't get any chance for characterization because it's just one gruesome murder after another. Because of this, it's really difficult to get invested in the kills or at points even feel sympathy, especially if you consider that we've already gone through 5 videos of very similar things. So yeah, overall, this is a highly gross video that ends up losing the dramatic potential that it could have had due to poor pacing and intensity. But it at least had the potential, so there's something.
Smaller donut with its own hole, and our donut is not whole at all.
The clue is in the bottom half of the list because they hurt the dog. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it. I don't know if this is going to damage my credibility as a reviewer, but when all of these videos are so similar, it's the little things that set them apart. So yeah, a dog gets its legs broken and I wasn't happy. It didn't make me think, damn, these killers are well and truly vile, or make me supremely disgusted. It just made me less happy because I was thinking about hurt dogs. I'll also use this time to mention another overarching issue I have with the series. The photos don't look real. Obviously, most of the visual elements are the surrealist paintings the killers make, but at times there'll be photos and videos included as well. You'd assume that this would be done to add more realism to the proceedings, but no, they also look completely fake. This is a relatively small issue, but it frustrates me because it just squanders a pretty clear opportunity to make this series more impactful. When the image of the killer popped up in this one, I didn't care because he looked just like a cartoon character. It seemed just like another painting, which could be cool if reality mimicking the paintings was a theme, but it isn't. It's just a weird and unexplained aspect of the series that takes away from the realism. You might have noticed that in the segments for this and The Lighthouse, I mostly talked about the issues with the show rather than issues with the episode. That's because these two really don't have much to criticize that hasn't already been criticized. The horror is pretty lazy, the writing is pretty try-hard, and the editing is unremarkable. The positives are also there, like the paintings being good and it sounding pretty unique. Man, this list is genuinely kind of draining. What I wouldn't do for a video that gives me something to talk about.
We take a bottle, becomes a glass. Where'd it go? It's in my...
Aha! Now this I can do some good talking about. Most episodes of The Painter leave you with a feeling of, oh, what the hell? The finale, titled The Painter, left me feeling, what the hell? A series so well known for its algorithmic and boring storytelling finally decides to make some interesting decisions, except they are, in my opinion, almost all wrong. This is a video I really have to take chronologically to fully unpack, because there is a lot in this one. So first up, this episode is riding directly off the coattails of Hell's cliffhanger. They've finally caught Mona, the killers have been stopped after all this time, and all that's left to gather is answers. And for the first 3 minutes, I honestly think it does this pretty well. There's a mystery element as to why Mona is so calm about being arrested, and some pretty cool visual effects. It wasn't insane, though it was setting up something potentially awesome. It then says that an interview with Mona is about to be shown, where all will finally be revealed. And the interview is... jeez, it's messy. My first complaint is to do with the supernatural side of things. In this interview, Mona talks about this government-run cult who uses this machine deep in the ground that projects signals into her mind, prompting her to do the killings and making her a vessel of this guy, the Red Man. This is a really poorly thought out twist in many ways. To begin with, this reveal gets zero development or build-up. There is a picture of a red person in the first episode, and then the aforementioned underground temple footage in this video, and after it's mentioned in the video, the cult is not mentioned again. Mr. Red pops up a few times, but no more actual diving into the machine or any more of the terminology that Mona talks about. This means that one of the most significant questions of the series, why the killings took place, comes out of nowhere and does not get a proper answer. This is highly frustrating, especially when there being no motivation at all would have been better. In this same vein, adding this big supernatural conspiracy theory pulling all of the strings makes most of the horror in the series far less effective. The only reason UrbanSPOOK had effective horror for most people was that it felt real. It felt like someone could really do all of these disgusting murders, and it set it apart from basically every single other analog horror. And then this final episode comes in and says, no, it was all this elaborate scheme run by a shadow government because of this mystical being who is potentially Satan. All of the realism is thrown away for a haphazard, paranormal demon story, which is such an odd decision which I still don't understand because it was apparently planned from the start. My other complaint is summarized very simply by a comment under the video. UrbanSPOOK if it was written by VivCpop. Mona just keeps on swearing and making sex references. A bit of this would have been great. A good way of showing that she's deranged is having her use inappropriate language in a formal setting. But that's kind of all that's done to make her seem messed up. Nothing about the way she speaks, the thing that she knows, or her style of communication expand on this. So for almost half of the video, we're just left with this gross person going on and on about her murders, all her zoophilia, her masochistic sex life, how right she is, and there's almost nothing to get out of it. The dialogue just goes around in loops, repeating the same ideas, sometimes in pretty much the exact same words, and all of it feels unnecessary because it just reinforces the idea that the mass murderer is a bad person. We knew that already. I guess it's cool to hear it from her, but it did not need to go on for as long as it did. After this, we learned that she was stabbed in her cell the following day. While I understand if you say this is an underwhelming end to the character, I honestly kind of like it. Making Mona seem pathetic and weak is a good idea in my opinion because it creates a nice contrast between the monster we built her up to be and the sex-obsessed loser she actually is. I also like the idea of not making your serial killer look too cool or mythical, and I spoke too soon. Right after learning she died, it's shown that numerous other paintings and murders have been found all over the United States. Forensic evidence suggests that Mona has done all of these, meaning, somehow, Mona has returned. The sad thing about all of this is I feel like a supernatural element could have been executed decently well. It just had to either have a good concept and be properly explained or left up to interpretation. Like, if Mona hadn't mentioned the government or the machine in the interview, I'd probably like this episode a lot more. But as is, it's caught in a state of limbo. Regardless, the video still has a chance to redeem itself. Once the interview was over, the same audio that was playing in the first video started playing. It's actually a great editing choice that reminds you of where you came from and makes it feel like everything's just repeating over again. This tone very slowly rises in pitch over the course of the explanation, building a lot of really strong tension, before the words, "Here are the paintings," appear once more for the last time. In spite of the frustration, I was invested at this point and morbidly curious to see what the climax would bring. Then, everything goes silent, and suddenly loud rhythmic audio floods the video and the paintings, more horrific than ever, start appearing. They just keep on coming, and the magnitude of how many of them there are really starts to set in. I was really impressed with what was being done here, both artistically and as a horror video. Then the paintings kept coming, and more kept coming, and more kept coming, and more kept coming. And more kept. For 4 whole minutes, there is nothing but paintings. That's it. After the first 90 seconds, or maybe even the first minute, it has stopped being scary. By that point, all it's doing is just hammering its point into you. How did you... The horror was right there. Where did it go? Audience members don't get more scared if you compile a bunch of scary things right next to each other, they just become harder to scare. Most of the names of the paintings, too, are literally identical to previous ones. Blank after the fire, scream blank scream. Like, my guy, you need to put in some effort. If this was intentional, it's just coming across as lazy. Then, to end it all off, we get the red man with some religious imagery, because why not? Well, that was The Painter. Geez, this did not land. It's probably the only funny bad video in the series because it just makes so many illogical decisions and results in a finale much less well constructed than what Hell seemed to be setting up. So we're done with it. Now we have 3 more videos, none of them as interesting, but all of them worse. Let's just get this over with.
I feel like that was not very well done. That scene gave me nightmares for 2 years.
Mead has the worst like to dislike ratio of any episode in The Painter. I kinda get why. It has the staples of everything that people dislike about this series. There is a part where a character is stabbed 487 times. I'm not exaggerating. Like, that's such an absurd situation that I don't even know what it was trying to do because it sure as hell isn't scary. There is a part where they say, "Here is the painting and its foreboding title." This is because they wanted to remind you that what you are watching is foreboding and scary, and you should be afraid of it. You couldn't tell that from, the content genuinely being scary. No, they needed to tell you. This also has the worst example of real footage just being painted as well. Like, why bother making it a security camera thing if you're not even going to attempt to use the realism of it? That one wasn't even sarcastic. I genuinely have no idea why you could possibly make that decision. Anyways, this video is the only one in the series to have a warning about graphic or disturbing content. I guess that makes sense, it is really disgusting. Maybe not the most in my opinion, though there are definitely some gory as hell photos. I haven't done a breakdown of what actually goes on because, like, does it really matter? This is the 8th episode. By the time you've reached this point, you've realized that there is no plot. You just mentally jot down the character names and listen to gross descriptions of gore. I could tell you that the security footage that looks like a painting is of Mona breaking into a police officer's house, but that doesn't mean anything to what this series and this video is actually about. Gore and not all that much else. It really isn't trying to hide it at this point. And this series wouldn't have been nearly as bad if they just tried branching out or expanding of some of its concepts. Hell is by far the best episode because it tries something new with the story and defied my expectations. The Painter was really poorly thought out and executed, but it's at least interesting and sticks out in my mind. But with everything else, it's just beating a dead horse. In fact, it's beating a dead horse in more ways than one. This, despite being gross and perverted, is also somehow the most run-of-the-mill episode there is. I don't even know what else to mention. They say at one point there is liquid in some of the 487 stab wounds. I can't say what that liquid is without for sure having this video demonetized, so that should give you enough information. Yeah, I think I'm done here, let's just move on.
Why would you do that?
Family is just terrible. Well and truly. It's so mean-spirited, disgusting, and unpleasant to watch, but doesn't have the kind of substance or artistic spectacle which usually justifies these kinds of things. What you're left with is, honestly, kind of a worthless video, and I don't say that lightly. Don't get me wrong, there are some things which I think are kind of interesting discussion points, but this, more than anything else we've gone through, is just bereft of anything enjoyable. It's a video where police officers encounter a brutally tortured and killed family, then go to a different house and find another brutally tortured and killed family. That's it. There's no real themes, no real good execution, the paintings aren't that interesting, it's just a miserable viewing experience that I can only compliment on being no longer than 7 minutes. And if the main compliment you can give something is that it isn't longer, then it should be really clear that it needed a lot more work. The main point I want to look at in this segment is definitely the horror, because it literally doesn't work on a logical standpoint. This episode utilizes shock horror more than any other in the series. There's the death of children, implications of people having to watch their family be murdered. They're not things to think about, they're things meant to hit hard in the moment because of the shock. But, and this is the main point, it isn't shocking. This series is predictable. As soon as I heard the episode name, Family, I knew exactly what I was getting into. We all know that UrbanSPOOK is the series that uses gore constantly, so trying to make it shocking when it uses gore, it just doesn't work. The series as a whole, and this video in particular, rely on shock horror every single time, and it just stops working eventually. And what makes all of this worse is that there isn't any variety in the execution. This video still has basic text descriptions of what went on with vague images to back them up, just like the last 6 videos. There needs to be some expansion, maybe some found footage, some different perspectives. The closest thing we get like that in this episode is the phone call at the end, which, it just doesn't work for me. Jesus Christ, tone it down! I can't take this call seriously with Isabel blubbering and sobbing her heart out on the end of the call while the drill plays excessively loudly. It feels like the creator is grabbing you by the shoulders, rocking you back and forth and screaming, "Murder is bad, be afraid." Finally, this episode crosses a real goddamn line in terms of disgust. The things that are brought up in this video are genuinely foul, and it's preaching the point where I'd be concerned for the creator's mental health. It doesn't really work as horror because it doesn't make me feel scared, it's just super unhappy and makes you want to take a shower. I'm sure those statements made some of you who haven't seen the video get a bit curious, but I seriously recommend you don't look into it. At worst, read it off a wiki so that you're a step removed. Anyways, that's most of it. Family is an upsetting, really poorly constructed horror video that I can't see myself ever recommending. I think it's the very first thing I've ever covered in this channel that I would give the dishonorable title of 1 out of 10. Like I said, essentially worthless. but somehow it isn't the worst that this series has to offer, in my opinion. That title goes to probably exactly what you were expecting.
This broke me. That broke me. I'm done.
I really don't enjoy roasting or belittling analog horror. As I've said many times before, analog horrors are pretty much always made with passion and determination, including the painter. UrbanSPOOK clearly makes a lot of cool art and wants to share it through this medium, and I don't want to put people down for expressing themselves. But with that said, how do you talk about In the Walls without belittling and doing nothing but criticizing it? It's one of the least effective horror videos I've seen, focusing fully on the shock and not bothering with any kind of execution or sensitivity. As a quick recap, In the Walls follows Corey and Margaret Beck getting kidnapped, tortured, and killed. You might recall them from the painting Scream Maggie Scream and Fuck Toy Corey. Yeah, the 11-year-old is the subject of the painting Fuck Toy Corey. How abhorrent! It has even less vaguely interesting elements than Family, while also having the most depraved reveal in the show, obviously being Corey. When it isn't being the most tasteless and vile episode in the series, it is being completely dull and by the books. I genuinely can't think of anyone in my life that I would willingly show this to, because, like, there's nothing here. It's just the implication of something really messed up, followed by descriptions of two kids being tortured. It's not well written, it's not well edited, it's not scary. Good God, is it not scary! Once the nausea of the Corey reveal subsides, you're left with no build-up, no payoff, and the only horror is present in the violence. Violence which you get in every single other one of the 10 videos of this series. It makes no sense. Part of what made the previous two videos, The Lighthouse and Faces, function vaguely was that there was some tension created through the sound design and gradual descent into hell the painter created. It wasn't very well done, but there was undeniable ambience with how the revolting crimes weren't given much gravitas, as though the next one was always something bigger. But this one doesn't have that. It plays its biggest, most unlikable hand in the very first frame, and tries to keep you engaged with meaningless gore throughout the rest of the video. And I don't think I should have to explain why the Corey reveal is unlikable. UrbanSPOOK, my guy, child essay is a serious topic. You can't just throw it in there because of the shock value. There needs to be nuance and build up and at the very least respect given to the kid. And the fact that he is 11 is one of the things marketing the video. It's on the thumbnail, his face and his name and his age is right there, as though it is some kind of epic horror aspect. Like, UrbanSPOOK, my dude, this is not something that you should be proud of. It's even worse when you consider that the rest of the video is pretty bad too, with the brick and body stitching that's reminiscent of the goddamn Human Centipede. It's such an insane clash between staying in the boundaries of the series and pushing it way past the brink of anything believable or engaging. And while it may sound like I'm ignoring all of the non-horror aspects of this episode, that's actually because there aren't any of those. No story, no characterization, no interesting editing choices. The only thing not horror related even worth mentioning is that this is another video where the photograph of the killer has zero basis in reality. I don't know, I just well and truly don't think there is any value to be had from this video. Truly a balance between mind-numbingly empty and upsettingly gory. It is easily my pick for the worst video by UrbanSPOOK. Well, there you go, my thoughts on The Painter. While I tried to keep this review at least somewhat constructive for the most part, this series is really not that good at all. I think I went through most of this without even mentioning the complete lack of world building. We don't get any insight into what the police are doing, how the people are reacting, how surviving victims cope, and media coverage. I get why it's been so heavily clowned on by the entire internet. Its flaws are glaring. Hopefully though, this video pointed out the root of some of these issues or made you think about the series in another way. I definitely don't hate the series, I found it at the very least inspiring to see someone turn their paintings into a storyline series with some well-executed elements. Plus, that scene at the end of Hell was really good. But as a watching experience, yeah, it's really repetitive and empty. I'd give The Painter as a whole the harsh score of a 2 out of 10, and I'd say the episodes are worse altogether than they are individually. Essentially, surprise surprise, I didn't enjoy UrbanSPOOK. But that's fine, at the end of the day, I knew exactly what I was getting into watching UrbanSPOOK, and while the experience was pretty bad at points, it was cool to find the small things that improved each of the videos, and has made me appreciate the care put into every other analog horror I've covered a lot more. I say it's good to watch bad things every now and again so that the good things get even better. good things like Greylock and Midwest Angelica. Yep, still very much looking forward to watching and talking about those. Also, the Mandela Catalog Volume 6 is dropping on March 13th, and I'm so goddamn excited. Definitely getting a video on that. Hopefully, those should be the next 3 videos that come out. I mean, it's not like there's a date coming very soon, which many creators such as myself post joke videos on. Anywho, thanks for watching, and cue the outro music.